Hello, my name is Victor. I'm from Chihuahua, Mexico, and I'm going to talk about the Cold War. Okay, well, first of all, the Cold War was an ideological struggle between the liberal, democratic, capitalist free market West, led by the USA, and the totalitarian communist common economy East, led by the Soviet Union. Each strove to impose their own model as the dominant global system. The Cold War begins with the end of the World War II and the use of two atomic bombs against Japan. This war ends in the summer of 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union, or better say, the fall of the Soviet economy in the year 1989. Some important events that happens during the Cold War are, for example, the fall of the Berlin Wall in November 1989, the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. This Cuban Missile Crisis was the closest the war ever came to nuclear war. Also, the world famous Vietnam War and the Korean War. Obviously, there are some more important events, like, for example, the creation of the NASA, but I just put some examples. Harry Truman. He was the 33rd U.S. president. He announced the Truman Doctrine in 1947, which shaped USA foreign policy for 4 decades. We also need to remember that he is the responsible of the Nagasaki and Hiroshima nuclear attacks. We call it Cold War because there were never any physical conflicts or hotspots. Basically, the Cold War was a high-tension nuclear standoff between the USA and the Soviet Union. Most people never realize how close we came to nuclear annihilation. Okay, now I'm going to explain two economic systems, the capitalism and the socialism. The capitalism is an economic theory where individuals assume responsibility for virtually all economic activities in most social institutions. For example, healthcare. And in the other economic system is socialism, not communism. In the communism, everything is controlled by the government, and in the socialism, the government controls and regulates services related to the common welfare of its people, such as healthcare and education, and allows free trade to flourish in areas of goods like TVs, DVD players, phones, etc. Okay, I put one example to understand these economic systems better. It says socialism. In socialism, you have two cows. The government takes one and gives it to your neighbor. In communism, you have two cows, you give them to the government, and the government then gives you some milk. In fascism, you have two cows, you give them to the government, and then the government then sells you some milk. In capitalism, you have two cows, you sell one and buy a bull. In Nazism, you have two cows, the government shoots you and takes the cows. What? Okay, let's not talk about Nazism. What countries were the world leaders during this period?
I remember they were Germany, Poland, Estonia, Bulgaria, Hungary, United States, France, Norway, and Britain.
Why did countries who were allies during the wars become enemies afterwards?
Although the US and the Soviet Union had been allied against Nazi Germany, the two sides differed on how they reconstruct a post-war world even before the end of World War II.
Where did the Cold War take place?
Well, it wasn't actually a full-out war. It was mostly nuclear tension between the United States and the USSR. So much of it was, of course, in the USA and the USSR. Also, Western and Eastern Europe felt pressure from the US to put pressure on the USSR.
What opinion did the general public have of the Cold War?
Well, the whole world was scared to presence a nuclear war. The World War II was just ending, and knowing that another war, even worse, could begin freaked out the people. There's something called the Sputnik crisis. The Sputnik crisis was a period of public fear and uncertainty in the United States in the wake of success of the Soviet Sputnik program and a perceived technological gap between the two superpowers.
What type of weapons did the two world powers have at their disposal?
They had all kinds of weapons, including atomic bombs and nuclear weapons.
Reflection. Okay, teacher. I don't know where are you from. I'm from Ciudad Juárez, Chihuahua, and I live in the frontier with the United States, specifically El Paso, Texas. And well, when I was looking for information for this activity, I found a lot of interesting things, like for example the Berlin Wall. I feel that there are a lot of similarities with the actual wall that we have here in Ciudad Juarez. You know, that long wall that divides the two cities, the two countries, Mexico and the United States. I even could say that the wall that we have here is more dangerous than the Berlin Wall. I mean, the Berlin Wall doesn't exist anymore, but what I'm trying to say is that in the Berlin Wall, more than 100 people died. And here in Ciudad Juarez, in well, every year thousands and thousands of people die. And I feel that if I want to understand the history of the frontiers, I need to study the World War II and the Cold War because they divided the world. They are very, very important in the human history. Finally, I would like to say that I'm obviously against the war, but I can notice how when there is a war of this magnitude, how the humanity progress. We progress in medicine and technology. Some countries progress in economy. And well, I think that it's sad that we need to be in war to find the best of ourselves. I think that the Cold War was kind of a good war because no one actually died and a lot of inventions were created. But also, I could not imagine how the world would be right now with a nuclear war. Another thing that I would like to mention is that, well, we live in a capitalist country, so I could not imagine how it is to live in a socialist country. Um, I honestly don't believe in socialism. I I think that the ideals of the socialism system are good because they believe in equality, but I don't see any kind of results in that system. For example, in the picture that I put in the PowerPoint presentation, we can see how the Havana, Cuba was in 1950s and how it was in 2010. There's not any kind of progress. Everything is exactly the same. And now we can see in Hong Kong with the capitalism how they became an industrial country. Uh, well, I think that capitalism is better than socialism. I don't think that capitalism is bad, but I think that there is a problem with the system when the companies start to have more power than the actual government. I think that we should change the things that are needed to change from our government and from our economic system. I think that we should spread equality, that we should teach everyone that we should love ourselves. We should spread unity. That's all. I hope that you can understand what I'm trying to say. Bye.